G'day everyone, welcome to another cycling commentary video. This video is a pretty big one because this is technically the second time that I ever cycled in the Netherlands in my life. The first time was the same route but on the way here. Now I'm cycling back to where I was staying. I'm actually glad I didn't record the first bike ride because I got sleeted on, so the footage would probably be a bit damp. Now, the city that I'm cycling in here is Deventer, which has a population of around 100,000 people, so kind of a medium-sized city. Which basically makes me think anything that Deventer can do with its 100,000 inhabitants, surely Sydney can do with 5 million at the very least. Now, the first thing that you'll notice is to the left, there is a pretty big bicycle parking lot that I just got the bike out of. And it's actually watched by an attendant who is also there to help with the car parking garage, which exists just on the outside of the old town, so that people can park there and then walk. So that way they don't have to be in their cars and you can have a really car-light city centre, which I think is a fantastic idea. You can see that there are very, very few cars here. I think these kinds of places should really be considered in Australian cities. This street has more cars, you can see that it's a bit more residential, but it's traffic calmed in such a way that that driver overtook me really slowly as well. Part of that is the fact that the streets are quite narrow. Part of that is the fact that bicycles and as well pedestrians are really common in the city centre, so drivers are always on the lookout. But another part, something that I find really interesting about the Netherlands, and actually Not Just Bikes did a great video about this recently, is the bricks, which create a bit of a vibration in the car, and it must be said for bikes as well, that cause people to slow down. And, you know, maybe it's not such a bad thing that cyclists slow down in the city centre as well, because it is mostly a pedestrian area. But interestingly, they purposefully use very old bricks to pave the city centre to create a bit of a historic feel. But you can see now we're on an asphalt part of the road. We just passed an interesting modal filter that only lets buses and bicycles through, which is pretty cool. So you can see to our left we have a grocery store, or maybe a department store. And you can see there are heaps of bikes parked out of it. To the right we've got a grocery store, heaps of bikes parked outside of it, sorry. Oh, and one thing that I really loved about cycling in the Netherlands as well was that they have no mandatory helmet laws. So it was something really comfortable about cycling without a helmet, and I found that it actually meant that I regulated my speed a little bit better. So I don't know, it'd be interesting to study this, if there's a difference with speeds when it comes to cyclists wearing a helmet and not wearing a helmet, and therefore if getting rid of the helmet law would then make cycling safer. There's already been studies into how drivers treat cyclists with helmets, and they treat them worse and they dehumanize them, and so therefore pass closer and things like that. So there are studies that show that, but it'd be interesting to see if it influences the actual behavior of the people riding the bike as well. So we've left the historic town centre and we are now on the famous red asphalt Fietspaden bicycle paths. The asphalt is so smooth. cannot overstate this. Like, Bathurst, where I live in Australia, recently repaved all of their roads. Well, not all of them, a decent amount of roads, and one of the roads that they repaved was on my commute to work. Even freshly paved, so many Australian roads are garbage. They are the coarsest asphalt. They didn't even fill in half the potholes and bumps. Does not come close to, I don't know, whatever they do to the asphalt in these cycle paths is incredible. It is so smooth. I actually find these apartments to the right quite interesting. They've matched the colour scheme of the older brick apartments to the left in a nice way while still looking modern, I think.
Well, hello there.
So at the moment, my partner and I are actually cycling side by side. You can't see her, but she's cycling on my left. That was something I also really appreciated about cycling in the Netherlands. The cycleways like this are designed so that two people can cycle side by side. It's just amazing to me that the planners take things like that into account. The actual experience. You see a lot of cycleways in Australia that are like, oh, we've plonked in a cycleway, now it's safe, there's separation from cars. But they don't put a lot of deep thought into the actual experience of cycling. Whereas it's very clear that they do in the Netherlands. So I am very likely going to be muting most of the audio behind my commentary, or at least making it really quiet. But at this point, my partner and I are just having a chat. Just cycling along, having a chat as if we were walking.
Man, why can't they have street parking this good everywhere? Why can't they have bike paths this good and just bike infrastructure and everything this good everywhere? It's so relaxing. I don't think I fully realised how stressful it is riding in Australia. Yeah. I kind of knew it. I knew oh, it's stressful, there are cars everywhere. But now I actually know what it's like cycling somewhere relaxing.
So I think that was a really interesting observation in real time from me. By the way, this is a cool bridge. And the reason that we're going under the bridge rather than over the road, the reason there's an underpass is because then, once again, thinking about the cycling experience, we can gather momentum down the hill and use it to get up the hill. But going back to relaxing cycling, something that, yes, there are relaxing parts of bike infrastructure in Australia. There are great places to cycle, like the paths along the Parramatta River, for example. Those are great. And yeah, I would probably say cycling along the Parramatta River would probably be more relaxing than cycling next to this highway in Deventer. But the thing that is really relaxing and calming about cycling in the Netherlands is, number one, it is super intuitive to use all the infrastructure because they've been, it's all been designed really thoughtfully. But number two, you just know you're in good hands. So I know that wherever I am going to cycle, there will be safe infrastructure and I will be safe. Whereas anywhere you cycle in pretty much everywhere in Australia, even if you're on a safe part of the bike ride, you're going to be thinking, man, I'm not looking forward to getting to the bit where I have to share with a bunch of traffic or whatever it may be. Or the bit where the road is really bumpy and poorly maintained. And you can see here that I'm pulling over because Len actually missed the traffic light and I broke the convoy. I did the thing you're never meant to do. So I'm just going to wait here, which once again just gives me a chance to admire the sunset. Nice and relaxing. Easy to rejoin the cycle path once she's over, and that you can see just how quick that traffic light cycle was as well. Basically, this whole video, it's going to be a bit disorganized because every 5 seconds some other amazing feature of Dutch cycling comes along and I have to talk about it. But essentially, yeah, like I was saying, one of the most relaxing things about cycling in the Netherlands is you know that it's in good hands, and not only is it doable and safe, but it's also really comfortable. Comfort is one of the key values, one of the key goals of the Crow manual, which off the top of my head I don't remember what it stands for, but it is the Cycleway or Cycling Infrastructure Design Manual.
Yeah, that was a really short 50 seconds.
So you could see on the right there was a countdown for the traffic light, and when I pressed that button, the countdown started to zoom past, responding to the fact that I needed to cross on the cycle path. Just another tiny little detail that makes me happy. And there are parts of the Netherlands where you're not on a main car route like a highway, where the underground magnetic loops or whatever, the sensors are going to sense you when you're 5-10 meters away, and they're going to say, all right, traffic lights up ahead, turn green for this cyclist coming. And it's just, yeah, that level of comfort. So you can see on the right there are molehills as well, which is completely not related to cycling at all, but still cool, still really weird. European animals are like, they feel like they should be in fairy tales. So whenever I see them, like a squirrel in Copenhagen I saw, it was weird. Cool, but very strange. You can see here 3 people are cycling side by side. So that's how wide, well, not anymore, but that's how wide these cycle paths are. It's really great. It becomes like a social thing, like walking with someone. It's just really fantastic.
I feel like on the way there we were going slightly uphill, and now we're going slightly downhill, which is nice.
Right, really terrible joke incoming soon. You can see on the left there are molehills and then a digger making a mound of dirt. That's the context you need for the joke.
Oh my god, that digger is literally making a mountain out of molehills. There are a bunch of molehills there. It's so funny.
Some additional context, that was about the 10th joke I had made about making mountains out of molehills whenever I'd seen a molehill. But this was the first time someone was actually making a mountain out of it, so I do stand by the fact that that was a funny joke.
Yeah, the joke only really works if you noticed before the big mountain of dirt there were a bunch of molehills. Yeah, did you notice them? Oh. No wonder you didn't think it was funny.
Got a freight train going overhead, and then we have once again going into the underpass, getting up some speed and using that momentum to get out of the underpass. Also, I just think, not to dwell on this terrible joke I made, but I feel like that should be the measure of good cycling infrastructure. Can you comfortably cycle side by side with someone, tell them a really bad joke, and explain it to them afterwards? Like, if you can do that on a piece of bike infrastructure with like someone as well, because my partner isn't necessarily a confident cyclist. She's not going to mix with the kind of traffic that I'll mix with back home. And she mostly prefers walking. But the fact that we can ride side by side and just have the most inane chat is such a testament to the bike infrastructure here. You could never do that in Australia. Especially we're speaking at normal volumes as well. Like sometimes I have a long tail cargo bike. She'll often sit on the back of my bike and we'll ride somewhere. And I'll be like shouting so that A, I can be heard over the car traffic. And and B, that she can hear me while she's behind me. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I'm cycling slower than the traffic light cycle expects someone to cycle, but just keep on getting these red lights. It's very sad. However, that being said, my next video is in Amsterdam, so a bit of a bigger city. And as I ride around Amsterdam, you'll see that, in city centres, not so much in where there are highways like we are now, but once you get in the city centre, the traffic lights do favour cyclists over cars, whereas here it's a bit more of an even playing field because we're next to a highway.
More than 3 years, really. I think your bike only has like 7, but that's still like more than double 3. But especially if you're not going up hills and you're not going that much, like any faster than 20 k's an hour, it's not like you don't need any more than 3 at all. I'm pretty sure we're turning left soon. I'm just gonna check.
In 200 meters, turn left.
So you can see up ahead just there's a floating bus stop which is in between the cycleway and the road, and the cycleway is in between the footpath and the bus stop, and there's not even a pedestrian crossing here, but it certainly seems to work well. And there has been a bit of controversy around floating bus stops in Australia, but I think if they work here, there's no reason that they won't work in the Oxford Street cycleway on Sydney.
Yeah.
So you can see that as soon as that guy pressed that button there, the light started to count down. And a minute actually is a pretty long traffic light cycle. So this was the trickiest part of the route, but I should have started in the left-hand side of the lane. And then because I was so concentrated, I went into Australia mode and I was like, oh no. I went into the left side of the road. And I quickly corrected. But, if that's the most stressful part of the cycle, and it actually wasn't that bad. It was just a new experience, and if you'd done it if I had done that a few more times, it would have been pretty easy, I think. But, that's a pretty good experience if that's the most stressful part of it. Going next to the train station, I should say, underneath the railway. Once again, underpass for that momentum. We're off the highway now. This is what the local streets look like. This is probably a quarter of the width of a street, a local street in Bathurst's town centre where I live, and probably half the width of many in Sydney. You can see that, yeah, there are footpaths, but you don't really need them. It's safe for everybody to mix on this street because the speeds are so slow and the traffic volumes are so low.
Yeah, it was tricky with people riding side by side. Yeah. But it's like, that's just something I guess you get used to. Like maybe in... Yeah, okay.
In 500 metres, turn left to stay on Colmschate Weg.
I love like your Australian Google Maps pronouncing all the Dutch street names in like the most bogan way.
So this van up ahead tries to drive away and then I let it go ahead. But I also don't know what the etiquette here would be. Do I just go in front of the van or do I let it go? I kind of let it go here. But I think that's another thing that, like, well, you know, if we're... if I were to cycle a few more times in the Netherlands, this is the kind of thing I would get used to. Also navigating. I would get better at navigating, I'm sure. Because here I actually took a wrong turn.
Nah. I've gone the wrong way. We're chucking a Yui.
Turn left onto Colmschate Weg.
Isn't this just idyllic? Look at this. Little canal running parallel to it, a beautiful little path. So it was just beautiful. It was idyllic. Imagine this in summer, the lovely shade, the water keeping you nice and cool there. So here is probably the sketchiest intersection that I had to use. And looking at that, it's like, this is not sketchy by Australian standards at all. So you go and you wait in the middle of the same spot that cars might. And then I waited for a cyclist to go past. And then I waited for old mate to push his pram across. And then, like, it was pretty chill. But that was, the fact that that is the sketchiest intersection of the whole bike ride is really saying something. Once again, we're back on these beautiful, tiny little narrow... It feels weird calling them streets or roads. They're more paths. And occasionally people will drive along here if they need to get to a driveway or something like that. But it's like, you know, streets like this, it's very clear who the priority is. And the fact that this is, if you're driving, you're a local leaving your house. So that was my second ever bike ride in the Netherlands. Comment below if you have any more questions about what the experience of cycling in the Netherlands was like, or if you've had any experiences cycling in the Netherlands and what you think that we could learn from the Dutch here in Australia. I'd like to end this video by giving a huge thank you to my monthly Ko-fi supporters. So big thanks to Arx, Abiram, Jake Coppinger, Michael, Trisha, Shareth, Joe, Ben, Adam, Transportist, Alexander, Lucas, Stuart, and Yvonne.